Hi, my name is Miriam, and this is the Black TV Show podcast. This is where I talk about my favorite TV show episodes, currently talking about season 2 of The Cosby Show. Welcome back to the podcast. This is episode 36, The Cosby Show season 2, episode 13, The Auction. This episode aired January 9th, 1986. So we start off, we're in the kitchen, and Alvin is baking a cake. The cake is for Mrs. Huxtable, and he made it all by himself from scratch. And Denise comes in and points, like when he mentions this to her, points out, oh, I didn't know that you do woman's work now. I guess men do it too. And Sandra says, oh, that was the old Elvin. Since then, since we've got back together, he's the new Elvin, and he's learning how to do what you would call women's work, which are technically not a thing. And Alvin says, yeah, that the way to be more sensitive and understanding as a man is to do woman's work. And Sandra looks and being like, that's not what we're trying to teach you. We're trying to teach you that we're trying to be equals as men and women, being equal, having equality in terms of work, home, like the work and home balance. And the fact that he says that for him to be more sensitive and understanding as a man is to do women's work. No, cooking is not a woman's work. And even like Denise points out, like, our dad does cook, and Sandra isn't. So as I said, she isn't happy with what he just said. And Alvin says, did I say something wrong? And Denise says, this is not women's work. Our dad cooks, and a lot of men cook. And Sandra says, he's just getting started by learning about the sexism, basically, and that, he can't just change his attitudes overnight. He could, okay? Sandra, don't defend him, okay? Just saying. And so Rudy comes down, and she asks Sandra if she promised that she won't get mad. And Sandra's like, what did you do? And Rudy says, I spilled your nail polish. And so Sandra's like, okay, then go clean that up. And then Rudy was like, in your suitcase. And all of a sudden, Sandra books it up to the stairs to her suitcase. And so then Denise says to Alvin, oh, that looks good. What kind of cake is it? And he said, it's chocolate chip. Oh, that sounds so good. I call myself a chocoholic. I just loved all kinds of chocolate. I like chocolate ice cream. I like brownies, chocolate chip cookies, double chocolate chip cookies, just chocolate in general, like, Aero and Kit Kat and all that stuff. So chocolate chip sounds really good. Have I ever tried a chocolate chip cake? I don't know. I've had ice cream cake that has chocolate in it, a normal chocolate cake, but I don't think I've ever tried a chocolate chip. I should try that out. I have a friend that loves to bake, so maybe I should ask her to bake. And so Cliff comes in while this is happening, and Cliff asks, like, what are you doing here? And Denise says, he's doing woman's work. And she leaves. And Alvin says, oh, I drove Sandra home from Princeton this morning, and I decided to stay and bake a cake. And, like, Cliff is like, no, really, what are you trying to do? And so Alvin says, like, I'm trying to impress Mrs. Huxtable. And then he starts going through this, like, saying, like, Alvin saying, like, I'm, here to be more of a sensitive and understanding man. And finally, Alvin says about the cake, how he's like, I want to impress Mrs. Huxtable. And Cliff says, Mrs. Huxtable likes you. Like, why do you think she doesn't like you, basically? And Alvin says, she's yelled at him, which is true. The whole speech that she had of, about serving each other with the tea. And Cliff says, it's your attitude that's the issue. It's, she's not mad at you. It's just the attitude. And Alvin says he's trying to change. You know how women are. And how are women are? And Cliff starts laughing. And Alvin says they are emotional. And you say a little thing and that sets them off. Dude, are you serious? Alvin. I really don't like Alvin. Like, if we're going back to that episode where I think the guy was named Daryl that Joseph plays, who ends up eventually being Denise's husband. I swear, Sandra should have been with Daryl, not with Elvin. Elvin is problematic, okay? And so Cliff says the cake looks good, but maybe we should get someone to test the cake. And he asks what kind of cake it is, and he says chocolate chip cake. And Alvin's like, oh, do you want to try the cake? And Cliff was like, I'm not, opposing of it, but I will try it for you, just so we know that it's good for Claire. Okay, excuse me. I feel like I'm like a Cliff. I would do that. If I see something like a chocolate cake, I'll be like, I can taste it for you just to make sure it tastes good. Like, I would be what Cliff is doing right now. So, like, we know what he's trying to do. He's trying to just have treats. Like, that's basically what he's doing. He's not really testing it out just so Claire would be happy with it. He just likes the sugar, And so he cuts into the cake, but he's having trouble taking out the slice, and he's like really hitting it hard, and Alvin has to hold the bottom of it, and like at one point Cliff like uses a knife and like tries to sharpen it on the side of the island basically, and as I said, Alvin has to hold it down. And I want to mention this, I didn't know this until I looked this up, but in this particular scene where Cliff tries Alvin's cake, Jeffrey Owens actually cooked that cake. Did you know that? Jeffrey Owens actually cooked that cake, and Bill had to pretend that it tastes awful, as Jeffrey is actually a very good cook. That is good to know, because I'd be hating on Jeffrey if he in his mind thinks that this is woman's work. But it's crazy to think that, Cliff really had to act this out as if it was horrible. Because imagine if someone makes you a nice cake, like just like if you're acting and like someone makes a nice cake and you put it in your mouth and all you want to do is actually swallow it because it tastes so good. But instead, once Cliff tries the cake and he's like, it's just disgusting and gross, he gets a paper towel and spits it out. Imagine you're like, I really want to have that cake. It tastes good. So good on Bill Cosby on acting, because for me, I feel like I would try to just swallow it. That's just how I am. Oh, I'm really a chocoholic. I'm sorry. That's just I really have an addiction to chocolate, and I really need to have that issue solved eventually. Eventually, I'm just going to say eventually. And so Claire calls for Cliff. She just comes home. And so he goes into the living room, and or before he goes in the living room, Cliff tells Elvin that you don't want Claire to eat this cake. He's too far from the ocean. And so Cliff goes into the living room, and Claire is super excited. She has a catalog in her hand and so happy. And so someone at her work had this catalog. And during her lunchtime, she went through it and she found Elson Wilson's painting, who happens to be her great uncle. This painting was used to hang up in her grandmother's house. And when she was a little girl, she would spend hours looking at it. And now tomorrow, it's going to be sold in an auction, and she wants it. She doesn't want anyone to have it. And so Cliff goes and reads the catalog, and it says it could be sold for $7,000 to $9,000. That is a lot of money. I'm not artist, like I'm not into art that much that I would spend that much money. But I understand, like, when you get to a particular, tax bracket, I guess, you're able to afford it. I feel like I would spend that money doing something else. For myself, I don't know if I've mentioned this on this podcast, but I've skydived in Dubai a few years ago, and I spent, it was 700 US, so it's 800 Canadian, and like my whole family and friends looked at me crazy, like, how can you spend that much money on skydiving? But to me, that is an experience that I can always talk about, just like how I'm talking about it to you guys right now. And I was willing to pay that money because that is once in a lifetime opportunity. But like for me, like buying material things, having a painting, it really, I don't know what, like I'm trying to think, like if there was a painting out there that I would spend a lot of money, I don't know, like it really depends maybe on the artist. But I guess in this case, it's from a family for Claire, so that's probably why she's like, I'm willing to pay anything. And so Claire says, she says, yeah, that's the estimated price, but it could go, it could go higher, but she really wants it. And he looks at her kind of crazy, like, really? And like she mentions, it's an auction and it can go higher price. And Cliff is like, you bet it will. Like, it will go a higher price. And Cliff finally is like, you know what? I agree with you. Let's get it. And she's like, no. I want to buy it by myself with my money. She doesn't want to depend on someone to buy this painting. It's been out of her family for 30 years and she wants it. And I just want to point out that in real life, that painting that was used in this episode is called The Funeral Procession, which it was done by Elson Wilson, who were literally talking about him. I will go in depth about it at the end of this episode. It says sold. We're gonna go get it. And Claire says she wants to hang it right above the fireplace by the mantle. And Alvin comes in. And he says hello, and Claire is like, oh, what are you doing here? And he says, I dropped off Sandra from Princeton. And she's like, why are you wearing my apron? And Alvin says, trying to learn how to cook. And Claire is just shocked to hear about this. And Alvin says, yeah, I baked you a cake, but I accidentally dropped it on the floor. And Cliff was like, oh, that was horrible. Knowing that, he's already tried the cake and knows how bad it was. Like, he's just going along with it. And Claire was like, oh, it's the thought that counts. Which is true. And so Alvin says, maybe I can cook you dinner for sometime. And Cliff was like, that's not a good idea. And Claire was like, no, that's a good idea. And Cliff was like, no, it's not a good idea. And Claire says, you can cook tomorrow night after the auction. And Alvin says, oh, an auction, what are you going for? Claire gives the catalog to him and says, oh, I'm getting that painting. And he's like, oh, I know this is a Alice Wilson painting. And like Claire was like, oh, how do you know? And he's like, well, I'm an art major. And he's one of his favorites painters. And he's shocked to find out that Alice Wilson is Claire's great uncle. And so he asks, like, how did it end up in the auction? And Claire says, well, my grandmother got old and she got sick and she had a lot of medical bills and she didn't want to ask anybody for help. So she decided to sell it without anyone knowing to pay off her medical bills. And so then Alvin says, oh, that's a wonderful thing that Cliff is buying you that painting. And Claire was like, no, I'm buying that painting. And Alvin says, did Cliff say it's okay? And Cliff and Claire they were just like, oh my God, what is he saying? Like, this is such like sexist thing for him to say. He's in that mindset. And so Claire, tells him straight, you think that it's okay for Cliff to buy this painting, but because he works and he's a man, right? So Claire says, you think that it's okay for Cliff to buy this painting because he works and he's a man, right? And Alvin was like, yeah, right. And Claire was like, well, I work and it's okay if I buy this painting, but not because he says so, because it is so. I love how she said that. It's such an iconic line right there. And Alvin says, I don't mean to say these things, they just come out. And Alvin's like, am I still cooking tomorrow night? And Claire was like, I'm looking forward to it. And so Alvin tells Cliff, like, I don't mean to do these things. And Cliff says, I understand, it's like talking before thinking. I tend to wait and think about what I'm about to say usually. I don't just blurt things out, I feel like. But yeah, and then Alvin says, I get it from my mom. And Alvin says, he wants to cook, but, the only thing he knows is how to bake a cake. So Cliff asks, like, what do you know? And Alvin says, all I know is how to make a salad. Everyone knows how to make a salad, okay? But, do we consider making a salad cooking? It is in a way because you're cutting up vegetables and then mixing them together. So I would say that's cooking. For me, I eat a salad every day nowadays. That's literally my diet. I love salads. I feel like I'm part Italian in a way, because I just love salad and pasta and all that stuff. And which is what they're going to be doing is Cliff takes Alvin into the kitchen and tells him about his secret spaghetti sauce. And it's easy to make. It's basically stealing a different kind of sauce and pretending it's your own sauce. That's basically what the secret sauce is. And it's like a barbecue sauce, which is weird. Like, I don't know if I would want barbecue sauce in my spaghetti. But I guess it's the barbecue sauce tastes similarly to a spaghetti sauce. I'm not sure. And Alvin's like, well, that's not really cooking. Well, you just got to pretend, first off, you got to get all the pans out and fill them with water. So you let it boil. You put garlic to put some smell, the onions and all that stuff, and some leaves, and basically pretend cooking. And Alvin's worried that he may say something stupid to Claire. So Cliff says if Alvin thinks that he's going to say something stupid, he should get up from his table, or I guess from the dinner table, and go outside and just keep going. I really didn't get that joke. And so it's the next day, and Theo comes down the stairs. He's wearing a jacket with a tie. He looks really good. He's ready for the auction. And Theo asked, if he looks good. And Cliff was like, yeah, you look good. And Theo was like, do I really look good? And Cliff was like, yes, you look really good. And so Theo mentions that cockroach, which we meet, I believe, on the next episode or the episode after. I can't remember. But we will see him in the next few episodes, just to let you know. He says that the auctions are very fancy. Everyone drives up in limousines, wearing tuxedo, eating caviar. And Cliff is like, since when did Cockroach go to an auction? And Theo's like, he's never been to, but he's seen it in James Bond movie. I guess that's how you know how events go based on movies. Because, sometimes movies tell the wrong thing about certain parts of life, I've traveled to countries based on movies myself. I've traveled to Italy because of the famous movie Eat, Pray, Love. And I also had family there, but I feel like Eat, Pray, Love actually helped me go there. I went, as I said, last year I went to Spain, in particular Barcelona, and literally I picked Barcelona because it was the city that the movie The Cheetah Girls, the second one, was filmed at. And so movies do make you do certain things. So they're not necessarily what you expect, though. So Theo says that Cockroach also says that the women are unbelievable. And so Cliff was like, okay, so you know what we should do is we'll drop you off 2 blocks away from the auction. So that way you're not being seen getting out of a packed station wagon. And you can go to a caviar store and buy a 6-pack of them. First of all, I don't think caviar tastes that great. I've never tried it myself, but it just doesn't seem like it tastes good. That's just expensive stuff, That's not I like the cheap stuff, And so Alvin comes from the store with groceries. And Theo was like, oh, what's going on? And Alvin's like, oh, I'm making dinner. I'm making it with, I'm making spaghetti with my Alvin's secret sauce. And Theo's like, oh, that sounds serious. It better be good. And so Theo goes, and Cliff looks in the bag. He sees the leaves, and Alvin points out that the leaves still have stems on it. There's garlic. There's Italian parsley. And Claire comes down and she says, I am ready. And Alvin says, oh, you look lovely. And by the way, I love her outfit in this episode. I swear, I feel like I should do like a whole episode about fashion. Like the fashion of, maybe I should do that as a bonus at the end of this series. But the fashion that, especially Claire Huxtable, she is just on point. And I love this outfit. I don't know if I would wear this kind of outfit at this time, like in this generation. I don't know. Or I guess, sorry, in this, I guess, decade in a way. But I love the outfits. I don't know. It's like beige. And I don't know if she has fur. I was wondering to myself, is the thing on her, I believe it's on her right side, is it fur? I'm not sure. It says he wants to say one thing, and Cliff is like, no, don't say nothing. Don't say nothing, you know? And Elvin says he wishes her good luck for the auction. Today's not only is she getting a painting that she's receiving a symbol of her heritage, but most people take their past for granted. Alvin says you always find it if we only look forward without ever looking backwards, then we're really looking nowhere. I don't know if that makes sense. So if we never look backwards and we never look, then we can't. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Let me know. And so Claire says, oh, that's lovely. And Elvin wants to start saying more things, and Cliff is like, no, we're good. And Elvin says, and that's all I want to say. And we end Act 1 right there, and we go into Act 2. We're at the auction, and Cliff tells the kids to not touch anything. And the kids were like, yes, we're not touching anything. And all of a sudden, Claire is looking for that painting, and she finds it. She is just so ecstatic and happy about it. And so Claire says she hasn't seen this painting since she was 8 years old. And she says the frame is different, but it's the same painting. And Claire tells Rudy, that is your great-great-uncle's painting right there. And Rudy says that she likes it. She's very short with her answers. And Claire was like, and I hope that one day your children will get to see this every day. And Rudy was like, and I will not let my children touch it, because you know how Claire just said, Cliff says, don't touch anything. So in a way, don't touch any paints, just in paintings in general. Theo asks Cliff, can he look around? There's things he needs to check out. And Cliff says, oh, I hope you see unbelievable things. And Theo says, I'll let you know. And so he goes, and Vanessa asks, can I look around also? And Claire says, yeah, but you gotta look after Rudy. And Vanessa was like, why do I always gotta look after her? I always look after her. And Denise was like, oh, I'll help you. Let's go. And so Sandra comes up to Claire and says, oh, this must be a good sign. No one's looking at this painting right now. So that means it might just be very cheap. And Claire's like, yeah, maybe, yeah. And Alvin points out, he's like, well, how do we know if there wasn't a crowd looking at this beforehand? And Sandra and Claire looks at him mad, like, why would you bring that up? And Cliff, for once, says, actually, I agree with Alvin for the first time. We don't know. So we gotta mingle around and see what people are saying about this painting. And Claire was like, you mean spy? And Cliff says, okay, yeah, it is spy, but we're gonna mingle around and we're gonna meet back here at 1600. I feel like when I first watched this episode, I didn't know what 1600 meant, but now I know what that means. That means 4 p.m. And Cliff says what the code words will be: the wet dog sides in fire. Like, what? And so everyone goes except for Claire, and she's looking at the painting. And so we cut to a different part of the area, and Theo is looking at the painting, and a woman comes by. They both stare at the painting, and then they both look at the painting, and then Theo looks at her and then looks away. And finally he says hi to her. The girl asks, so what do you think about the painting? He's like, it's nice. And she says, be honest, you don't like it. And he's like, well, yeah, I don't really like it because it looks like my little sister made it. And she was like, well, that's why it looks good. It's simple and innocent. We find out that her dad is a curator at a museum, and we find out her name is Darlene. And all of a sudden, Theo asks, like, can you show me around? I don't know much of the paintings, but he gets interrupted by his 3 sisters. And Rudy points out, oh, who is she? And Theo introduces her to them and says that, she's teaching Theo about art. And Rudy says, oh, do you like her? And Theo also is like, can we go check out the other paintings on the other side away from my sisters? That's basically what he says. And so they go. And we cut to back to the Ellis Wilson painting. And there's a man looking at it with his catalog book. And Cliff sees the man and is like, oh no, that's not good. And so the guy looks very interested in the painting, and Cliff is trying to convince him, it's expensive. It's $7,000 to $9,000. That's expensive. The guy was like, it's not much. That's usual. And Cliff is just surprised. He's like, what? And so the guy was like, it shows master of light, form, simplicity, composition, rhythm, and motion. And Cliff was like, oh, I just thought it was a nice painting. And the guy says it's a lot more than that. And the guy goes to another painting where there are two white people. I think they're a husband and wife. And they're looking at this is another painting. This is not the Elson Wilson painting. And they it says, oh, we should put this painting like above our couch in our house. And so the white guy says, or I guess the husband, he says, I was here 2 months ago and a painting that was estimated $10,000 went up to $98,000. Damn, who is going to spend $98,000 on a painting? Guys, like $98,000, you could put down a whole mortgage right there for, well, not a whole mortgage at this point, but you could put down like a third or a half of a mortgage. Like, really? Like, that's not how I would spend $98,000. Someone spent $98,000 on a painting that was supposed to be $10,000 basically. And Cliff just turns his head. He's like, what? Like, he's now worried. And the white guy says, it's called auction fever. And the white guy says, this could happen again tonight. And Cliff is just like, oh no, this is not good. And we cut to now we're actually at the auction. And there's a painting, the first painting that was there, it's goes up to $19,000. And then there's another painting that comes in, and it's a landscape from Edward. I don't know how to say the last name, but it's not. I don't think it's a real person. I was trying to look up if this was a painting from a real person, but I think this might be a production designer that designed the painting. Because that's what the cases are when they shoot TV shows, where like your production, your art department deals with the painting. So I have a feeling it was one of the production designer, the art director that painted this painting. And Cliff says it would look good in his waiting room, like in his office. And he asks Elvin what's the estimated price, and it says $700. He's like, you know what, I'm gonna go get it. And Cliff is like, yeah, take the handle. So they start, I forgot where the number started, but they end up going all the way up to 1,000. The lady puts 1,000. This is the white lady that was part of the conversation about, the auction fever. And, they're up to 1,000, and, Cliff is kind of, I don't know. And, and all of a sudden Rudy gets up and Rudy stands up and gets up and yells at the lady, that is my daddy's painting. And Cliff makes her sit down, and the auctioneer says $1,000 and a lady that loves her daddy. And so he asks Cliff, are you gonna do 1,100? And Rudy yells out 1,100, and it goes all the way up to 2,000. And finally Claire just tells with her hand to put the paddle down, because they ain't spending more than $2,000 on this painting that was supposed to be $700. And so the woman got the painting for $2,000. So then the next, they were about to bring up the next painting, and Cliff says, my painting was supposed to be for $700, and I went up to $2,000, and your painting is supposed to be $7,000, and it's going to go up to $40 million. I love it. That's like unrealistic though. Like, who's gonna pay $40 million for a painting? I say that now, but there's probably someone out in these 1% people of the world that would actually spend $40 million on a painting, probably. But you could do better things with that. I swear, these rich folks could, end, homelessness with the money. Like, these billionaires can end homelessness with the money that they have and still have enough money for themselves. This is life. And so Claire was like, I don't care. And Cliff says, okay, it doesn't matter to me if it looks good in jail. Like, as if, like, she might steal money to pay it off. And so her painting comes up, and she literally already has her paddle up. Cliff's like, they haven't done the bid yet. And so then they start the bid at $5,000. What? Who starts to build a bid at $5,000? Like, why didn't they just start at least, like, I was going to say 1,000, but it seems so much money. Maybe $500 would have been better. But they start at 5,000. She has it. The white lady puts $7,000, and her husband's like, you already have a painting for your couch. So they stopped. And then an Asian woman bids at like 8,500, I believe. And literally everyone in this room is bidding. And finally we get to $11,000. And if you remember, there was a black guy that was looking at that painting that says, it's more than a painting. They're all waiting for him to see if he's going to bid again. And he's like, I'm out. And Claire is so happy, and everyone jumps at her, in joy that they got the painting. And we cut to being in the living room where the painting is on the wall over the mantle, and it's hanging. And for the rest of the series, it's just going to be there the whole time. And so the phone rings, and Vanessa picks it up, and it's Darlene on the phone for Theo. And everyone starts making that noise, ooh. And so Theo says, I'm going to pick up the phone upstairs. And Vanessa says to Darlene, he's going to get the phone upstairs. And everyone makes the noise, ooh. And Theo says, okay, well, I'll take the phone downstairs. And so Theo takes the phone, and he uses his deep voice to talk to her as if he thinks that deep voice will make him a man, and everyone's like, ooh. And so Theo, like, finally is like, he yells at them, and he's like, cut it out. And then again, he does it again. He's like, cut it out. He like changes his voice basically. And Claire's like, you know what? I think you should take the phone upstairs. And he's like, yeah, okay, I will do that. And so Claire and Cliff go into the kitchen, and that's where Elvin is cooking. Well, it looks like he's done cooking. And Claire says, oh, can I try this sauce? And he's like, yeah, go ahead. And so she tries the sauce, and she loves the sauce. And she mentions, you guys should work together, make money off of this. But, as an attorney, you should probably get Mrs. Farmer's permission. So she literally knows that the sauce was from the barbecue sauce. Like, so why didn't she say that to Cliff, that if she knows what sauce he uses for his secret sauce? And so we end the episode right there. That was funny to me, that like she literally knew about that. So we had a lot of guest stars, but I literally looked up every person that was on the list. Majority of them didn't do anything afterwards. I don't know, I can't remember the guy's name, but the white guy that's in the episode, he actually died like 3 years after this episode from AIDS. And as you guys know, that back then in the 80s and early 90s, AIDS was an epidemic basically. And so he passed away. But we had Jeffrey Owens in this episode. So we had John L. Marion. He's the head of Sotheby's. I can't say it right, but this is it's a major New York auction house, and he's an auctioneer for that auction house. So they actually got a professional auctioneer to do the auction for this episode. So the guy that does the, 1,000 here, 2,000 over there, like the one that does the action, like he was the guy that plays that part in this episode. That's what he does for a living. So they actually got a real person to be part of it. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, and everyone else that was in this episode, they haven't really done anything, except for that one guy that did pass away. He's done a few things. And so, as I said, I was going to talk about the painting. So the painting is called The Funeral Procession, which it was made by Ellis Wilson. At the end of this episode, Dr. Huxtable hangs the painting over the family living room mantle, where it stays for the remainder of the 8 seasons. In real life, the painting is displayed as part of at the Aaron Douglas collection at Amistad Research Center at Tulane University in New Orleans, Louisiana. Ellis Wilson was born on April 20th, 1899 in Mayfield, Kentucky, and he died on early January, either 1st or 2nd in 1977. The most that Wilson ever got for one of his paintings was $300. So that's a huge difference from this episode where literally Claire paid $11,000 for it. So his paintings were not valued as much. But I feel like, after this episode, they literally he could have made so much money, even though at this point he did pass away. So it's some fun facts right there. And so the lesson for this episode, where I kind of took a quote from Claire Huxtable from this episode, which is, women have jobs and they make their own money. It's okay if they buy something expensive, but not because a man says so, but because it is so. Because I told you, I love, that was an iconic line that she said. And so the question that I have for you guys is, what's the most expensive thing you've ever bought? As I said, for me, I've never bought, I guess, I don't know what the most expensive thing in terms of material things I've bought, but as I said, I paid $800 for skydiving, which is more of an experience. I don't know when I'll ever buy experience material things, but let me know. I really want to know what the most expensive thing you've ever bought. I really want to hear from you guys. Go to Twitter and Instagram at Black TV Shows Pod. I would love to hear your response using the hashtag the auction. And so Mother's Day is coming up this weekend, and so I've decided I'm going to do a bonus episode from the show Girlfriends. It will be Girlfriends Season 2, Episode 20, My Mother and Myself. Currently, Girlfriends is airing on it's currently streaming on Netflix, so please check it out, and we're going to talk about it. It'll be coming out tomorrow. Hopefully everyone will have a lovely Mother's Day. And then the next episode in terms of the continuation for The Cosby Show is episode 37, The Cosby Show Season 2, Episode 14, Vanessa's Bad Grade. I will see you all on the next one.